So in all honesty, there is a decent amount of risk in selling where you could lose some money. Hey, it's Don. Today let's address the risk management aspect of reselling. What could you lose as a reseller? What do you have to look out for? Now, if you've been a reseller even for a little length of time, chances are you've had some scammers out there try to take one over on you, try to get the item for free, make up some claim or something like that. That's typical in this industry, and it does happen. It will happen. Now, we personally know a business that was selling on eBay for quite some time. They sent $3,000 worth of electronic stereo equipment to a overseas address. Everything sounded on the up and the whole works. So in that case, eBay actually sided with the buyer. The seller lost the entire case. They couldn't get the merchandise back, and they lost the $3,000 radio equipment there, the stereo equipment that they had. That is a high risk. That was enough of a risk for them to stop selling completely on eBay. That's just one example. In a couple cases, we lost money and the item because of a false claim. We stopped selling to Belgium in general, specifically that country, because we had 2 scammers in a very short period of time, all on records. Maybe it was the same person, maybe they had several accounts, I don't know. But we just pretty much blocked that country out because of that. That's part of assessing the risk that you're going to have to deal with. A story that always comes to mind with risk management. If you ever watched Seinfeld, George was supposed to take over risk management for George Costanza for a company, and he didn't want to have to read the book. The risk management book is huge. I've seen a real one, and they are really that thick, and it's really boring reading for the most part. George pretends to be, I think he pretended to be blind or couldn't see enough to read so that he could get a audiobook version of risk management. And at the end of the day, the audiobook version that he gets is basically his voice, it sounds like, and it's just as boring as if he read it himself. Risk management isn't exciting. There's nothing thrilling about it, but it's going to help you negate some of these types of losses. I wouldn't have shipped something that expensive that's fragile overseas, nor would I recommend it like with a audio piece of equipment overseas these days. It's just not worth the risk anymore, even if you get a few more bucks out of it, especially at the end of the day, if that buyer files a false claim or it gets damaged in transit. You're not covered unless you spend a lot of extra money to cover something like that on your own, usually. So you've got to be extremely careful with anything you do. Now, there's other issues that you could run into with reselling that could risk your business in general. Let's say you sell something that's been recalled or banned, a banned item. Good example is lawn darts. If you sell a set of lawn darts, other than just an empty box, and somebody gets hurt, you could be extremely liable for any injury. You could, end up in jail. You could end up in who knows what trouble for selling something like that. You could buy stolen goods, and that has happened to people that I know, in all honesty. We have some friends that run a pawn shop, and I've seen all the stories where, police show up. I've been there once when the police showed up and wanted to look at some things that they actually had in inventory. Now, with a pawn shop, you have to put in the information. The police can check it at any point for a certain length of time, at least in this state, and then they can come in and just confiscate it. So if you buy something of questionable origin, they can come and confiscate it from you. You won't get any money back on it at all. None. So if you shell out $500 on something that turns out to be stolen, that $500 and the item are gone. At least that's how it's been in this state where I live right now here in Ohio. So risk-wise, you've got risks from buying, you have risks from selling, and some of those, again, could risk your business in general. If someone is hurt by something that you sell, or you sell an illegal item that you're not legally allowed to sell over state lines, that could wind you up in jail or in court again. If you send things improperly overseas without documentation, or you send certain things overseas, you can get dinged as well. I'll give you a couple examples. A gun-shaped lighter, you cannot send to England. I wouldn't even send it overseas at all. Even if it's just a lighter, it's not a firing thing. When they're scanned into England, for example, and this happened to us years back, it was scanned in at England, everything went fine. As soon as it hit the scanner, it was gun-shaped, and it was automatically rejected regardless of what it technically was. Nothing like that can be sent in. Another item that we had that was returned. We sent a Dukes of Hazzard Mego figure from the 80s. Bo Duke, I think is what it was. And it was returned with that one too after a long length of time. Now, we lost the initial shipping. There was a big spiel with that. It took quite a few months to even get it back, and then to get our money back on top of it after that case. Now, we were required to refund the buyer immediately since it wasn't deliverable. And then it was on us to hopefully get the item back and hopefully get, some shipping results and stuff like that out of it. Now, if it was lost, it was in the global shipping program. I was told if it was lost by customs in their country, that's out of their hands because eBay turned it over to the proper place. So if it never comes back, that's on me. So again, there's risks no matter what you do. Now, if you paid attention to yesterday's video I had up, I talked about the German new regulations and laws, which basically mean that you have to register, your supplies have to be a specific type if you're going to ship over to Germany. So that's a risk. If you're doing it on your own, even from a Shopify or someplace like that, you're going to run into the exact same problem because it's an international change in how they handle service. So that's a risk. We took Germany off until we decided what we're going to do, or if we've got plans to advance our business in Germany, we'll go from there. The simplest way to avoid risk in that area, to manage risk management, is just not for us to ship to Germany. After the VAT changes as well, there's not as many sales going on either. So everything's a risk. Another area which is huge for those who are just starting off into reselling, who don't have a lot of knowledge in collectibles and stuff, is selling brand names on eBay that are on the Vero list. Now, eBay has a Vero list. That's a risk factor, a huge risk factor. If you're selling some electronics or using the word onesie or Velcro in your title, those can get that listing shut down. And if you have a couple of those because you didn't know, they can shut your account down or suspend you for it too. So that's a risk to your business as well. There's a lot of risks out there. Part of the reason I don't mess with clothing or NOS stuff like I used to, unless it's wholesale and I have a invoice for it, is that I don't want to deal with, having my account suspended for 3 days or whatever they happen to do these days for that sort of thing. We've been suspension free probably for 15 years, I think, at this point. So I want to keep it that way. It does happen occasionally, or some screwball thing. Now, another thing, your payment processor, or again, going back to what you list, if you list some adult items or some items that have something hazardous in it, even if you don't know that, those are all risk factors that can affect you doing this business. So no matter what spot of this business you are doing, there is a risk in there. Even if you sold something to somebody, they received it, they left you good feedback. 2 or 3 months down the road, they could open up a chargeback with their charge card company. Maybe they moved. Maybe they could claim they didn't get it. There's a ton of reasons why you can still lose after it looks like everything's okay. Again, these are all risk factors. If you're selling something very expensive to somebody with zero feedback, I would be a little leery. I'm not saying don't do the deal, but it's always a risk when they're new to eBay with that high dollar value. Let's say you're selling a $1,000 piece of equipment, or like in the case in the beginning, a $3,000 stereo unit. So all of those things have risks involved in it. Every aspect of it, every single aspect of this business have risks involved. Now, that's not to panic. It's not the end of the world. If you're smart, you follow along with what isn't allowed to be on the platform. You don't mess with illegal items. You verify that you're allowed to list something on eBay to begin with. Make sure it's not on the Vero list. Don't just go to eBay, sold, and say, hey, there's 50 or 100 of something up. They're all selling it, so that must mean it's okay for me to sell. Those folks may have a deal. They may have a wholesale deal with whatever the product company is that you have. You may not have that deal. So don't ever go by what you see other people selling. That doesn't mean anything. You are your own self, and eBay could hold you accountable because of just you being a new account or for 100 other different reasons. If you did something else wrong or violated some other policies, they may go after you before they go after someone else. So again, mitigate your risk Watch your risk factors. Do anything you can in your power to make sure that you're not doing something wrong. If this is your source of income, you don't want your account shut down for listing something that you just didn't look into enough. Banned items. Toys that are recalled are a huge one. Now, a recalled toy could get you in trouble with several of the government consumer safety bureaus. So there are some implications that could get you in legal jeopardy for selling certain items. And there's no excuse to say, well, I didn't know. That just doesn't work for stuff like this. It's on you. eBay doesn't have to even tell you if it's banned. Again, you are supposed to know. If you're selling it to a child and you're selling something in the toy category, it better darn well be for that age. Now, if it's collectibles and you market, adults only, not a toy and all this stuff, you're pretty safe on those. But again, don't list in the wrong category some items. That can get you in a little bit of trouble if, again, it's not, say, child safe. But that's just a touch on this. There's tons of things you need to worry about. But again, as long as you're following along, you pay attention, you look up your stuff, just go to eBay's Vero page, you should be safe and you shouldn't have any issues. And do the right thing. Don't take shortcuts. Don't risk it just to make a couple of bucks. In the long run, if those risks or those things you list shut your count down, it's far worse, and it wouldn't have been worth you making a few extra bucks at that point. So just be safe. But anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
Walks downstairs and loner in pairs and makes a slinkety sound. A spring, a marvelous thing. Everyone knows it's Slinky. Everyone knows it's Slinky.
Slinky sold separately in metal and plastic.